Strong Dads wants to thank 4-Speed on 50 for sponsoring today's show. If you like classic cars, great food, and a taste of Americana, you have to visit 4-Speed on 50's Diner, located on Route 50 in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Stop in today for a meal and an experience you won't soon forget at 4-Speed on 50's Diner. Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson along with Carl. Carl, you are in your fatigues today, man. I feel like you're getting ready to get after it.
Well, actually, I didn't tell you this. I thought maybe I could try to appeal to the younger people, even being an old man.
You mean after our last show of complaining about how those young people don't work and
stuff?
Oh,
yeah. Stay with us.
Nothing but I think you even said two grumpy old men or something. Yeah.
Did I?
Not on the show, but afterwards.
Oh, maybe I did.
I talked about it.
The memory goes. Hey, on that note, real quick, we talked about how to be a good worker. If you didn't watch those, I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
But there were two things that somebody threw out. One is, just as a tip real quick, keep the main thing the main thing. But Luke, a good friend of ours, said so many times when he's teaching kids, they say, well, I've never done that before. And he says, well, after today, you won't be able to say that.
Right.
And having that willingness to try from that standpoint. So if you haven't watched those videos, I think it's some of the better stuff that at least for me.
Yeah.
So,
it was good.
I
enjoyed the conversation too, and I think there's totally good stuff in there. Today, though, I think our topic today is, can people really change, right? And a lot of that comes from both you and I find ourselves, and I'll just use the word coaching roles. I do it for a living. You gravitate very strongly to it, to pouring into guys' lives especially. And one of the frustrating, one of the hard parts about doing what I do for a living is sometimes you go, man, I don't even know if I'm moving the needle at all on this person. Yeah, and right. And again, like, you quickly realize I'm not the one changing people.
Well, it isn't. Yeah, it isn't us that changes people too.
Right.
It's I believe God's got to move in somebody's mind.
Somebody's
heart.
But when you start, you think you're the guy who put this person, into better water and stuff. So it is hard. But sometimes you've seen people, and addiction brings this out a lot. You've seen people just cycle through, sobriety and back into using and sobriety. And you're thinking, I don't think that person could actually change,
Yeah.
And you hear phrases thrown around like, well, it's a generational curse. It's
hereditary.
Curse. It's hereditary.
There's a hereditary component.
Yeah.
Genetic.
And that's a sign that people, they doubt sometimes whether change can actually occur. So I think we're going to try to tackle this today.
It's a big issue. And to say that we have the magic wand would be false. A lot of people struggle with what's the magic bullet. What is it that causes people to change? One of the things that you said, this is going to sound so, and I don't want to get to the sponsors, but it sounds so cold. Sometimes when you're working with people, and I did that for a lot of years with recovering people or people who needed to recover, and there was a guy named Killer Joe, and I don't know.
You didn't work too long with him, did you?
No, he was one of the 20-year guys.
Yeah,
he had 20 years in, and now we were talking, and he says, well, the reality is, some people got to drink, so I stay sober. Some people got to go crazy, so I stay sane, and some people got to die, so I live. And I thought, that's the most cold thing I'd ever heard in my life. Unfortunately, there's a reality to that.
Yeah.
If we don't see those other sides and don't experience that and don't have these kinds of testimonials, even positive and negative, then, you don't know what can really happen. And you get to a point where you realize you're not pulling this, you don't have the control, but some of this is part of the process for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately. So anyway, you got your sponsors.
Yeah. So, let's get into this. So we're going to thank our sponsors first. We're going to thank Quality Auto Mart, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and 4-Speed on 50 Diner. So again, thanks to our sponsors out there. Also, we just thank all of you, listeners and viewers who are sharing our show, giving us those thumbs up and 5-star ratings. We appreciate that as it just helps on the search engines. And We thank the good Lord as I've been trying to do that more consistently and not taking that for granted, the opportunity that we have and just the tools and gifts that we've all been given and trying to use them and honor God in the work. So we want to be just thankful there. All right, so let's get started. Have you ever struggled to change something in your life?
Oh, no. Well, and I told you it's kind of appropriate that we're doing this today. Today, 37 years ago, I took my last drinks. It'd be about 7 o'clock tonight. And I think I've touched on here I had decided to take my own life, and I needed a miracle. So obviously something happened. And I want to throw a shout out to Barry. Barry and I celebrated our anniversaries this week. He has 38. We're very 2 days apart, 2 to 3 days apart. So he's been somebody that we get together and once a year and celebrate. So you talk about change, both of us and others. It's dramatic from where we were to where we are today.
Yeah.
So I'm very blessed.
Yeah. So change is possible.
It is possible.
Right?
It's difficult.
But it got pretty dirty prior to changing in terms of your life quality and the people being hurt, you being hurt.
Right.
Yeah. What was the expense, I guess, you might think.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I never did deal with addiction issues per se. I drank quite a bit more, but I could shut that off. And again, that's not in my family. My family does struggle, but for whatever reason, that was not my deal. I think we did an entire show on anxiety.
Yeah.
And how it's just that pride and arrogance, afraid of failing, of making mistakes, of being found out, was
that's a big part of it.
Big battle for me.
Yeah.
And that finally dropped me to my knees with a very sloppy lifestyle. So I wasn't taking care of the sleep and the eats and the exercise part to keep a body healthy.
Yeah.
And then I just completely fell apart. And I think hitting that, we'll use this phrase probably a couple times today, that rock bottom for me was, it was a game changer.
Yeah. It
was a game changer.
Yeah, I think it's got to come to that. I wasn't your typical person. I had a good job. I was coming out of the bodybuilding. By the time I stopped drinking, the big fitness craze was coming on, and you're considered a musclehead, but you needed to do more aerobics and stuff. But I was really fit. I actually set the records for all the corporate facilities that TriHealth had. Yeah. So you had this thing that you do at the beginning of repetitions on the bench and all this stuff. So I was in great shape. I was a weekend warrior for the most part, but even at that, I would come in a total blackout, be at work, never had a hangover. People say, well, I would have never stopped, So I had the girl everybody wanted. I had the nice car. I was not your typical person, but bottom is different for everybody. It's this thing that you just, is this all there is? Is this so? And for me too, it took a long time, and I still wrestle with it. It's PTSD is what it's been called. I tend to think that it would take more than that to qualify, at least what I experienced in life. But yeah, so I wasn't your typical person, but the bottom was dramatic. Yeah. Internally, emotionally, psychologically, it was horrific, to put it bluntly.
You point out something that I think is really important, because when I work with people, I see from my outside view, they must be at rock bottom. They must be. Look, the house is gone.
Wife's gone. Kids are gone.
Yeah. So from the outside, but you just point out the idea of internally, emotionally, they have to be at that place where I can't live here any longer.
There has to be, I think, for change to be effective, to have the fuel that it needs. They talk about Abraham Lincoln had the ability to step out of himself and view himself. And I think that's somewhat what we're talking about here.
Right.
At least for me, there came a point where I had the full vision of what I was, Not those things, that most people measure by, but what I was as a human being.
Yeah.
And it devastated. I think I told you before the show, it was a single sentence that somebody uttered to me about the ramifications of what I had done that almost dropped me. My knees literally buckled. I'd heard people talk about your knees buckling.
Yeah.
And it was just, oh my gosh, what are you, kind of thing. So that was, for me, that was the spark, if you will. But it wasn't the solution.
Yeah, no, we're going to try to work towards that, how to. In training and counseling and psychology training, we are given a phrase called a sensational emotional event, and it's a C. Did you have a C?
Yeah.
Right? And the importance of that is it's not a sensational event. We have lots of sensational events, right? It's a sensational emotional. And the importance of emotion is what etches memory in us, right? So I've used this analogy before. I could be a first responder, and a first responder has gone up and seen thousands of car wrecks, okay, and thousands of not so good scenes with bodies and so on. But all of a sudden he pulls up and he sees it's his daughter's car.
There it is.
That wreck will be the one that dominates over everything he's ever seen.
Correct.
Because of the emotional part. And so we have to, when people can distance from emotion and they don't go there, or the event doesn't spark the emotion, they're just going to have a lot of these events, right? It's another drunk. It's another loss at the gambling table.
And it gets glazed over. You become hardened.
Yeah.
And
it
doesn't reach in and do what you're talking about.
Yeah. And now how we always get to that, I'm not quite sure. We're going to talk a little bit about, how we've seen that. But I think in Acts 9, that's where you see the conversion of Saul to Paul. Right. And I think that a part that is interesting about that to me, and learning about Saul, he was an arrogant cuss.
Oh, I don't know, arrogant, passionate.
Yeah, but he had arrogance. I was a Hebrew among Hebrews. No one did what I was able to do. So but because he was passionate, he had the accomplishments behind him, right?
There's an old saying. I used to say it. I don't care if you disagree with me, just so long as you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And when I was doing network marketing with that big things of people like, I always said, if I can turn you, I don't care if you think it's the worst thing in the world. If I can turn you, then you're going to be one of the best. It's people who have strong emotions, strong opinions, are passionate about some area in their life quite often. And actually, that's probably one of the big success factors in recovery.
Yeah.
Is once you get that turned, so many people don't see their affliction as a gift.
Yeah.
I've said you can use a hammer to build, or you can use it to destroy. The same characteristics that make somebody actually chase a demon to the bottom are the same characteristics that might will help them chase it out.
Yeah. You just got my brain thinking about, both my boys were SEALs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I got a chance to hang out with a lot of those SEALs when I would go visit and stuff. And I think the very first time or two, which, by the way, I'm allowed to say they were SEAls now. Because before I wasn't allowed to say that. Don't you ever mention that. And I was like, I don't really care now.
Yeah.
I get to brag. But all of these guys are jacked. They're all studs.
Yeah, the studs, truly.
Yeah. But what's separate, what I recognize immediately with these guys, and I think it's because of the line of work that I do, they were fun. They were passionate about everything. They could sit there. You could get them in tears, crying.
Yeah.
Or you could get them so angry they'd run their head through a wall. The emotion, which again, you have to learn to protect yourself from some of that, right?
Yeah, you got to have people around you too that will help rein you in at different times.
Yeah, but it was that passion that separated them. They had fire in their belly.
Oh yeah,
and
you got to have it to be that.
Yeah,
you got to have that side of it.
Yeah.
So Paul, you think was he was arrogant, he was egotistical, he was prideful.
For sure.
And then he gets smacked upside the head.
And then all of a sudden, boom, he's hit on the road to Damascus and he's blind, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess you could lose a lot of senses, but I've always thought about, man, if you lose the sense of blindness, especially if you've always had that and just how your world would be rocked.
I was blind and now I see.
Yeah.
That's what actually happens to him.
Yeah.
The scales
and
fall
when
away.
when he opens those eyes, those scales fall away. How, I got to do some things different now. Right. And God says, Christ says to him, why have you persecuted me? Right. And he calls him on the carpet. And at that point, there's just a completely different shift. I'm starting a new way. Now, I'm sure he was pretty reckless when he first started. I mean, I can't imagine he became the perfect evangelist immediately. He was probably stepping on toes and doing some things.
I'll take the opposite side of that. And I sit and think, if you've ever been in your life, I shared on here about how I lost all my money and how I had looked at money. And on the backside of that, not being happy. And I look at Paul, and I think, gosh, if you had been persecuting and helping to kill Christians, and now you've been confronted with truth, I don't know. He goes off for a while to be instructed. He said that was some of that is like, I would have to wonder if he wasn't I can't imagine if you had been made aware of what you had been doing was horrific in the eyes of God. And here you thought you were doing good. It may have been a very humbling experience for a period of time. I tend to think that. I personally, I don't know. That he probably was set back quite a bit.
Well, he finally became became a great student.
Right.
I mean, he was finally coachable. And that arrogance probably was dwarfed compared to where it was. Anyway, so these are the things, guys, that we're talking about, like, for us to change. And I think as we talk about the how, people all day long try to say, man, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I need to lose 10 pounds.
That's
right?
a bad topic this morning.
And there's all of these different things that we need to do, intentionality, right, and create new habits. But how about you help us out? What are some things that you've learned about some of the how?
Okay,
to start to say, okay, now I recognize I want to change, and I haven't maybe had that sensation. Maybe I have not had that S.E.E. Experience.
Well, I thought you maybe had with your breakdown, basically.
Yeah, well, I know for me I have it. I'm maybe the listener out there.
Well, I want to back up too, and I want to say, listen, it doesn't have to be tragic. It doesn't have to get to that point. And I'm going to tell you, most people in the process of doing whatever they're doing, they have inklings. And, there's a something that they'll think. I'll just talk about alcohol. There's a lot of things, maybe I drink too much. I wonder if I drink too much. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you're asking that question, and it seems funny, but if you're, and there was a guy that's used to do a radio program, and a guy called up one night and said, I think I might be drinking too much. And he said, son, you like green beans? And I think I shared this with your wife.
No.
Do you like green beans? And he said, well, yeah, I like green beans. He said, you really like green beans? He said, yeah. He said, did you ever call a perfect stranger at 10 o'clock at night wondering if you're eating too many? So if you don't have to get to the C.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to these inklings in there, you could probably cut a lot of years of pain out of your life.
Yeah,
because you'll get these things. You can call it God if you're a believer. You might call it something else, intuition, if you're not. But there's something usually that these little road markers along the way. So don't think that if you're out there and you're doing something. Well, I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yep.
I'll say that a lot of energy comes from that. But you can, especially depending on the addiction you have, if you flirt with it too long, you may become mentally incapable of doing. You can destroy your brain. You can destroy the ability to ration out. So the how for me was one of the first things I heard. It's a simple thing. All you have to do is change everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. People don't want to do that. That's one reason why they don't even step into Christianity.
Right.
Because they like the life. They like enough parts of their lifestyle.
Right.
That they don't want to give up all of that.
Right.
So they pull the little nooks or the little tidbits out and say, wow, I can still do these things.
Right.
And that
or I can do it to this degree.
Right? And so it's that full change. The people I've worked with addiction, one of the first things I say and usually they're sober by the time they get to me. They've had to go through a program of some sort. Okay,
right.
So a temporary sobriety. I'm not sure how.
Or at least
long,
they're not drinking.
They're not drinking. Right.
I do on that. I tend to hold two different standards. There's people who are not drinking, and then there are people who are sober.
Yeah,
they're not always the same thing.
You're right. Yeah. And so I'll see them quickly. They got out of prison or they got out of the rehab, and they're right back living in the same house.
Yep.
Being around the same buddies.
Right.
Probably same workplace. All these things.
Right.
And it really hurts them when I say, you're not in the right place.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? You need to move.
Yeah.
You need to move. You need to go to South Carolina or Alaska. You need to move. It's not running away from your problems. Most of us are not strong enough to stay in our neighborhood. No. Right now, if you could, right, and obviously it's been done before, but most of us are not strong enough to be able to. You said this all the time. If I sit around the barbershop long enough, I'm going to get a haircut. Right, and
that's even me.
Yeah, I got one hair.
One hair.
Yeah,
trim these here.
But it's just a matter of time.
It is
that the strength, the conviction, the willpower, whatever we want to call it, is going to drop, and you're going to step right back in. And so, changing your environment, man, change everything. That's a big ask.
Well, and we talked about this beforehand. You got to have a plan. You got to have a belief or faith. You got to have. I've said the worst thing you can do to somebody is to make them aware of the problem without a solution. Mm-hmm. You give them a headache, but you don't have the pill. You don't have an aspirin. So, when you set about this, I'll say from my standpoint, and a lot of people I've worked with, you think, especially with alcohol or drugs, I suspect, it's like, I'll never have fun again. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to be romantic again. I'm never going to be funny again. I'm never going to be creative again. I don't shoot pool as well when I'm sober. All these things that you've developed around this personality that you think. So what you're asking the person to do is to die, to die to that lifestyle and to say there is something better and how do I get there?
Yeah. Because
there is something better. I think about if I'd have taken my life 37 years ago today, what all I'd have missed. And I don't mean to sound arrogant, how many lives I wouldn't have touched and how many lives I would have touched in a negative sense. So, and I want to say, if you're out there, if you happen to be watching this and you're contemplating suicide, it's a problem in our culture. But if you're contemplating that, that's a permanent solution to short-term problems. Life can get better. You may think it'll never get better, and that's some problems here. You got to believe that, and there's too many people, and we would love to hear from you. We talk with you. Reach out, contact us if you're thinking anything along that line. Don't nurture that, okay? It's on a serious note, very serious note there.
I want to go back to the idea you described what many people describe as a functional alcoholic or drug addict, and that means they've mastered a level of success, and they almost say, gosh, I can still get up at 5 a.m., go to work, run my business. I make more money than the guy next to me, and so I can do these things. I'm not sure why I need to change, or maybe it even helps me because I can go home and I relax and I can get up. So they've built this habit of life.
Different.
Yeah, they built it, and that habit is the reason why they are successful in their mind.
Actually,
in their mind.
And I don't want to exploit this in a way. I'm not saying this is good, but there were a lot of people that I knew over the years that sobered up that their employers weren't so happy about it because. What happens is the perfectionism is a big part of addiction quite often, and they're so driven and they're trying to offset what they may realize over here. And the work environment is one place that nobody can fault you from that standpoint. Oh, he's such a good worker, And they get sober, and all of a sudden they're trying to rein in these extremes in their lives.
Yep.
And it's a gift one way. And I'll try to be very delicate here. I dated a young lady from a very wealthy part of Cincinnati, and she was in recovery, and I was shocked at the level of success that so many of these people had, and they were blasted all day long. All day long, which didn't, people in my 20s and early 30s, and I'm like, how can they be 60, 70 years old and have been doing this all day?
Yep.
So there are functional people that have built their lives, and they can't see any other difference.
Yeah.
And the world is applauding what they're doing, and it's killing them all along. You know, cirrhosis, car wrecks, losses of marriages and things. So
yeah, when we talk about the how, I think one of the first things we have to recognize, as we've mentioned the word several times now, is the pride behind doing what we do and continuing to have the problem. And so when you see the word denial, I don't have a problem, right? That's a pride thing. I'm fine where I'm at. And so I think one of the first things that people have to realize is it's okay to say you do have a problem. It's okay to say that I don't have this figured out, right? And that's one of those first dying to yourself kinds of things. And so if you can ease yourself just enough to hear somebody has pointed out that you do have a problem, and just sit in that. Just don't defend it. Just sit in that. If your knee-jerk reaction is to, that's not me.
That's not me. That you don't understand. It's my job. If you had my job, or if you had my problems, I've heard all these things. Yep. People deflect it away instead of looking at it and saying possibly. And that's where the S.E.E. You just never know what's going to pop that bubble to let somebody hear. Mm-hmm. But you know, I talk about this a lot on here. Teaching financial peace for years. You sit and talk to people and you tell them what's possible. And I say it all the time. People settle, and this is true about anything where you're struggling in your life and there's a better you. I think Jordan Peterson talks about the better you that calls to you or that is possible. So many people don't believe that. And I say in financial peace, people settle for baubles and trinkets. You're wasting your money on these little things down here because you really don't believe you can have what you truly want in life. Or with addiction or these problems, you really don't believe that a better life is possible for you. You look at your family history, you look at your peers and everything like that, and you think, oh, who am I? Who am I to do this? So I see it all the time. People go out and they get the cable television, they get all this other stuff when they really want to go to Hawaii, and they never think they can do that, or they can never, all these things. So these areas of our lives are the same way. We settle for baubles and trinkets, whether it's physical things or emotional things, or even our relationships or jobs, whatever it is, because we don't really have a plan that we believe in, and we don't really believe that we can change.
Yeah.
And you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can. People do it.
Yeah. So we talk about the how, and we talk about, you say, well, change everything.
Change everything.
Change everything.
Yeah.
So let's break that down a little bit. One of the first things I think is surrendering that pride. Okay.
Yeah.
Surrendering
that's a tough
pride.
one.
That's a tough one.
You'll work through that. Even in recovery, you'll get into pride.
Yeah. It rears itself back too.
Right.
You have a few good days and your arrogance starts to creep back in.
Start believing your own stuff and everything like that.
Where we get the phrase "die to yourself daily."
Yeah.
That's a reminder. I think that's one reason why I know some people are opposed to this, but other people buy into this idea, and that is they count their days of sobriety. Like I'm 50 days sober, because each day they have to remind themselves, I got to die to this. I got to die to this. And so now I'm 30. What are you? 38 years? 37. 37 years. And so it's a reminder that I continue to go to the death on this issue.
Well, and early on, it's so vital to celebrate because it is such a phenomenal thing. And I don't know if we want to parse all this in recovery. There's so many areas of change, whether it's your fitness, your health, your marriage, all these things. There needs to be an awareness of what could be. I believe that. There needs to be something to tell you that what's going on in your life isn't the best it could be, or it's detrimental, and that there's another way, and that you need to go. But then on top of that, there's an old saying, and this doesn't mean you need to go out and get your, friends. This isn't about necessarily getting rich, but you'll be the sum total of the 5 people that you're closest to and the books that you read. And I'm a big believer in biographies. I'm a big believer in autobiographies, because these are not theory. There's a lot of people out there who like to preach about health and wealth. And there are a lot of people who like to do the self-improvement circuits and everything like that. I think a lot of that comes up really short. It's just hollow. It's just a feel-good kind of thing. But then you get into stories like Frederick Douglass. You get into people like Nathan Bedford Forrest, which his history isn't so good from what he ended up being, but what he did, it's just amazing. Grant, Franklin, Churchill, you look at these people and you think, yeah, this is very possible. You need that kind of hope. You need hope and faith.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go to that word hope.
Yeah.
Right? Because we talked about earlier, one way I can tell that a marriage is in trouble is they stop dreaming together.
Yeah.
And a dream is a keeper of hope, right? It's a seed of hope there. And so when you are stuck in your old habits and you think that they're keeping you successful, the way that we transfer out of that is to create a new dream that can give you some hope. So it's not unusual and we don't want to strictly stick in the addiction thing, but I've just seen this enough. A guy has been an addict of sort, and he switches his addiction to, I want to complete my first marathon.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now he's got a new dream, a new hope.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about it. And so it's very intentional. But again, that hope is what provides the energy, the emotional energy to get up every day and say, oh, I need to check in on this one.
Yeah.
I got to check in on it.
Yeah.
So,
one of my drinking buddy here in Cincinnati, I moved to Cincinnati. I was recruited to come to Cincinnati, but there was a certain part of that was like I needed what they call a geographical cure. I thought if I was just somewhere else, it would change. Mm-hmm. And I've got this saying, no matter where I go, I always manage to show up. So if you think if I change, you'll show up. But the day that I realized that I could not drink anymore, he worked with me, and we were on the floor at the company we worked for, and I said, hey, Wes, I can't drink anymore. Now, Wes did pills and alcohol. He was more extreme than I was, and we just about went to fighting right there.
Oh, wow.
It was that drastic.
He was losing his buddy.
Well, he was losing his buddy, but the other thing was he couldn't accept if I had a problem that he might have a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you, one of the things that actually helped, and he and I went to the same biker bars. And I was in the discos in Indianapolis, biker bars here. And there was a place called The Rescue up on Montgomery Road. And they had a mirrored door. Now, this is kind of critical. And we decided we weren't going to run together. We'd go in there and hustle the bikers, okay? So I'm not running with you anymore, Wes.
Playing pool?
Playing pool.
Okay, hustling. Yeah.
Playing pool. And the very next time that he went there, the bikers saw him coming alone, and they were on each side of the door. You couldn't see into the bar because they had that mirror film. Mm-hmm. He stepped through the door, and they beat him down right there.
Wow.
With pool cues. There was a girl named Brenda. She was a biker girl, worked at the same place, but she was coming along behind him, several feet behind him. If she hadn't gotten him by his leather coat and just dragged him out, he probably would have died. He was gashed up. I mean, he had and I'm thinking, it could have been me.
Oh yeah.
If it had been either one of us, probably alone, it would. So I'm looking at that, going, my gosh, how close. These were, and he went on and he continued. It didn't turn out well, but you get these little things, and you realize, you need to change. It's a simple thing. All you got to do is change everything. That means those people who promote that in your life, those people who drag you into that. A lot of people say, oh, you don't have, whatever it is. It's like, oh, that's not that big a problem.
Yeah.
It's not, people do that all the time. Everybody, those kinds of people, I'm sorry, you got to change that. You got to get away from it. Distance yourself as much as possible.
Yeah.
So more house? You want some more house? Or you got something you want to throw in there?
Yeah, no. Some more house. One of the house I want to put in there is the, as you were just talking, the word boundaries. Like I have to put boundaries on those people. I have to say no to that. The other side of that too, or another part of that is taking the time that sometimes I think the word gratitude is being thankful is a churchy kind of, well, just be thankful. But usually people are seeking, like if I'm my addiction is money, right? It's porn, it's alcohol. I'm always, I can't sit back and be thankful because I'm always pursuing what's out in front. And so that sometimes sitting back and just being thankful, that gratitude of, man, I'm fortunate to have what I do have. And so I just think that's a good way to start grounding yourself.
The gratitude is the hinge on the gate to sobriety. And if you can't stay grateful, if you start getting to that point, they call it dry, in recovery, where you can't be grateful, then you're in trouble. You've got what they call stinking thinking, and that's true about anything. If you start getting, whether it's saving for the future, whether it's the marathon. There are 7 scripts that they talk about in recovery that are not necessarily in the main 12-step programs, but one of them is the what the hell script. Oh, what the hell? It's not going to make any difference. What difference is it going to make long term? And you're in trouble. And that's a lack of gratitude that is now manifesting itself as apathy and anger and resentment and things like that, somewhat, that you're just going to, what the hell? And that's a key script you need to watch for in any change you're making in your life. You get to a point, you think, I've tried. Yeah. And what difference is it going to make?
I watched my dad. My dad did have a drinking problem, and he was a guy who kind of came up with nothing. He was a worker like crazy, and when he finally started having a family, he wanted to do that well. Family was always important to him. And he taught us all about being thankful and giving and all of those kinds of things. But I got into my high school years, and I saw a change in him. And maybe some of the drinking was part of that, but I also, his business was not doing well. And so
you told me about this.
He started getting resentful.
Resentment.
Yeah.
Resentment.
And so because he was a giver. He used to give. I mean, if you needed something, he was going to either get you that car you needed, or he would save people a lot in a good way. And all of a sudden, when he needed some things and it wasn't being provided, those people weren't
reflecting back.
Yeah. He became resentful.
Yeah.
And kind of nasty.
Yeah.
And that's when he started chasing harder that same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I recognized that because my mom used to say, because there were some things going on there that were threatening the entire family, my mom would say, his name's Merle too, and she would say, Merle, you have an amazing family. And she would remind him of all the things. And I remember those words bouncing off him like he was Teflon.
Yeah.
And that wasn't him when I was a little kid.
No, and in his mind, he's saying, "Yeah, but."
Yep.
It's the "yeah, buts" that really causes
100%.
Yeah, but.
And so, and it took, the family did get blown apart. There was a divorce after 35 years of marriage, and so on and so forth. And I'm not sure that he ever healed from that. He's in the nursing home now, and we love him like crazy and everything because he was a great dad in so many ways.
He did a great job.
Well, he
and your mom both did.
Yeah, he was just good that way, but he lost his way.
Yeah.
And gratitude was one of the symptoms that I saw.
Yeah.
And I, again, without training or anything, I was like, man, why doesn't he see that?
It's tough, that it speaks to the core of who we think we are.
Yeah.
It is really hard to overcome that. It takes an exponential effort to escape the you that you feel that you are or deserve. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Big word there, deserve.
Yeah. So you battle with that. I had my bouts with that a lot in my life. I've had some major blows at different times, and you just think, I don't really deserve this. And that's another thing that can happen, when things start going really well. It's like you can get caught up in that too. It's like, wow, I don't, that feeling of like being a phoney.
That's where the self-sabotage stuff starts to leak in.
Which is what I was going to say. As far as addiction goes, and even for these other things, and I figured this out a long time ago, early on, I'm going to tell you what really causes this cycle that happens. And I don't hear this a lot, but this is my experience. The person, especially dealing with addiction, and I'll talk specifically to alcohol and drugs because I know the most about those. What they do is they go about creating so much chaos or pain in their life that they get to a point where they think, well, who would blame me? But the whole time, and this is what scared me most early on, was that my brain had a way of thinking that left to its own devices was going to self-sabotage. And I saw this where it really came to my dad would stop smoking. And we had colonial bread in Indianapolis, and they had these little short loaves. And Dad would slice up a bunch of tomatoes. I mean, a pile of tomatoes and a bunch of Miracle Whip. And my dad would eat almost an entire loaf when he stopped smoking. He would sit there and just eat sandwich after sandwich after sandwich. Yep. And then one day he's like, oh.
Look at that belly, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'd be better off smoke. And that's the same. You may think that's silly, but that's the same mechanism. It's the taking on huge debt. It's taking a chance that you shouldn't have, or a risk, or leaving your spouse for no reason at all, and the kids, and creating this chaos in your life. You really got to watch that. If you're going to make a change, I try to stay on top of that more than just about anything. Where am I starting to try to create? Where am I creating chaos and pain in my life needlessly? Life's tough, but where am I doing this? Because what I'm doing is I don't trust myself that way. I'm building up to justify what I want to go back to. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Well, so I would say to that, like, teaching people to recognize their patterns. Because I talk about all the time, one-off behaviors really don't catch my attention much.
No,
okay?
Anybody can do anything for 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it's not a good thing you just did, but you did it, right? But the pattern is like, you have to recognize, I've got a history of not following through, or dropping this issue, or going into debt, whatever it is. That's another, like, it's a come to Jesus time. Like, I need to say, gosh, you're right. That is a pattern,
Yeah.
So,
but we could have cut to the chase here probably early on. There's a minister out there I like, and he talks about effortless change. And this, you think, well, we've talked about all these other things, and I'm a big believer in this, that this is a great mechanism, and that is the gift of the Holy Spirit. And that if you study the Bible, if you read the Bible, and it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, what you're putting in, that over time it's almost effortless, because it will have an effect on you if you study that. If you take that in and try to integrate that, it will change you. Every recovery program talks about having a higher power, God. It's the Christian God for me after studying all of them, but I find the Bible is just replete with many things that you just moving you, changing you incrementally. It's just like water on rock. And that's something that I had to learn early on too, is Rome isn't built in a day. So many times, if you're going to make a change like this, you get up one day and you think, well, I'm going to organize the closet. I'm going to train for the marathon. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. What you do, instead of looking at one thing, or that area, that problem area, and just saying, I'm gonna master this as best I can, and the rest of this stuff will work its way out. You thrust all this stuff on you, and try to build Rome in a day. Try to rectify all the past. Try to get yourself healthy. That's bad. That's just a bad
guaranteed failure.
Guaranteed.
So you're building daily habits, right? And I like your reference to the Holy Spirit, but I just put in my list here, praying. And so, because I like the idea of, if it's true that hanging around the barber shop every day, I'm going to get a haircut.
Hang out long enough, you're going to get a haircut.
Then it also works the other way. Yeah. If I hang out around Scripture long enough, right? If I'm in that Word long enough, something's going to start to seep in, right? Yeah. It's going to catch me at a softer moment to absorb some of it. And so the daily practice of saying, I don't quite maybe understand all this stuff, or it's overwhelming. Like, to this day, I read stuff in Scripture and I go, I never really thought of it that way, or I never saw that. So just the idea that daily practice, to allow that word to seep in you and hit you when you need to be hit.
Yeah, and that's a key too. You've been that for me in my life. My buddy Tom that died was that. You need people in your life that will hit you upside the head. You need, kings have jesters, and they were the people who would speak truth in a way that was palatable, and so they didn't get their own head taken off. But you need people in your life. And a lot of times when we talk about changing everything, I'm just going to tell you, it sounds arrogant. A lot of people would rather pull you down than to raise themselves up. And that's, like when I talked about my buddy Wes, he could not deal with the fact that I might have a problem, because that means he has a problem or a worse problem. So some of these, we get into this thing, it's like, well, you don't want to be unpopular. You don't want your friends to think you're stuck up. This, for a lot of people, this is life and death.
Yeah. Yep.
It's life and death, when you get to the extremes, the edges of this. So, yeah.
Yeah, life and death, and dreams versus nightmares.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I could have had this dream, but I'm going to end up living this nightmare, even if it doesn't end in death.
Yeah.
Carl, I think this is a great show. I hope you guys out there listening to this recognize we are not simplifying change as if it's a simple thing to do. And we, beforehand in our little foreplay talk, we were talking about
that sounds really bad.
how do we get some of the places we've gotten, and you in particular, you're talking about kind of the explosiveness in your house. Guys, we get to where we are often because we live daily lifestyles and don't really think twice about it. The people who are inputting and stuff. Yeah. And so you might be in a place in your life right now where you're like, man, like, how do I have this explosive temper or this addiction of sort, or money problems or whatever? Chances are it's because you've just repeated the pattern many times. Yeah. You grew up with it. It was in your head already. And so just calling that out for what it is, one of the things that you find out when you're married or soon to get married is you realize how crazy your own family is.
Oh.
Wow. Both ways, right? Like, well, we just always did it this way. And Linda would be like, well, but that's kind of strange. Why do you guys do it that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe you're right. And so that whole idea of calling out those patterns that got you where you were in the negative. You also have patterns of good, right? So we're not saying change everything. We are talking about those things that are hurting you or holding you back.
Right.
That you say, no, man, this is a pattern. And so let's start being intentional about rebuilding them. And I love what you say. I'm not sure if I always agree with it. It doesn't have to hurt. Like, it could be gradual that I could change out, but I'm slow, right? It usually has to smack me in the head.
Sometimes before you let go, it's got claw marks all over it. But, what you brought up there was something I had on here, and I'm a big advocate of therapy. But I'm an advocate of good therapy, and I'd say Christian therapy. There's a lot of therapy. Early on in the program, there was a guy talking about his shrink had him crawling around in a pen on the floor with a diaper on.
Oh, I have to try that technique.
Well, no, it didn't work out. He actually took his own life.
Oh, no.
But the shrink was telling him, you need to regress back to something, back there. I'll say from personal experience, and I think for a lot of people, all of us probably have some sort of issue. We have these things. Counseling, good counseling, will be the most courageous thing you'll probably ever do in your life.
Yeah.
It will dig into things, that you just would rather not think about. But sometimes the energy, the horsepower behind these negative things in your life may be things you don't even necessarily remember well. It could. I do believe there are repressed memories, and you carry this stuff around. I'm not saying that everybody's got that, but there are, good counseling, good Christian counseling, in my opinion. Be very wary of some of the trends, in my lifetime of going through counseling. Early on, there was satanic ritual abuse. There was repressed memories. That was a big one. There was, I can go through.
These are the things they were trying to call out.
There were phases. They went through phases. Okay. There for a while, everybody was a victim of satanic ritual abuse. It seemed like the devil and satanic worship was everywhere. It's like, how did I miss this? So there's phases in the site, and I'm not. The psychological community tends to try to come up with the latest, greatest thing.
Absolutely, yep.
And it's just key. But I am a big believer in doing the hard work. And a young man that I talk with that I care a great deal about, he's entered into that. And I said, this will be the toughest thing you'll ever do. Toughest thing you'll probably ever do is to confront, because I know his childhood and I know the things that happened. But I truly believe you can do a lot of these things here, and over a course of time, there's living and there's thriving. And I think this is one of the things that makes the difference between just living or surviving and thriving.
Yeah. every guy that comes in, I say, thanks for coming in. And then I say, it took a lot of courage to come here.
It takes a lot of courage.
Because especially women, yes, I mean, for all of us, right, to come in and seek help. But women are more willing to drop to their knee on an issue like this, and us men just really struggle with that pride part. And so I always compliment the amount of courage it takes for someone to come in my office.
Yeah. When guys are taught, don't whine.
Yeah.
You know, you want to cry and something like this. So there's that side of it too, where we feel less masculine or whatever it is. And I'm just going to tell you, there's gold there for a lot of people. If you've got areas of your life that are a mess, there's a really good chance that there's some origin to that you need to look at.
Yep. All right. Guys, we hope the show was helpful. Again, as Carl was referencing earlier, if there's something that we can help you out, everything from you've lost all hope and the idea of ending your life is there, to just struggling with a nagging problem that's really starting to cost you, please reach out to us. You can get us in our office at 812-576-7625. Check us out on the rocksolidfamily.org webpage. I'd say that's about all I got on that. Let me thank our sponsors. I want to thank, again, Quality Auto Mart, Casey's Outdoor Solutions, and 4Speed on 50 Diner. I want to thank those guys for the continued support. Change is hard, guys, but it's worth it when you can start to create a new dream of where you want to go. And you know, I think finishing strong is a big deal.
Paul said it.
Yeah.
I ran the race.
Yeah. All right. You good?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Go out there and be a strong dad. Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart and Service for being a proud sponsor of the Strong Dads podcast. Started in 1985 and going strong for all these years. Recently, Quality Auto Mart has transitioned from owners of Mark and Nancy Repke to longtime employee Fred and Lorraine Venus. For all your automotive needs and golf cart needs, check out Quality Auto Mart, located across from Indian Lakes on Highway 46 outside of Batesville, Indiana. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.